everyone. We're with my longtime friend Phil Tagami, who's actually working on a fantastic project called Oakland Global. Phil, how are you?
I'm fine, Zenny.
Yeah. And Phil, you were kind enough to give me a version of this document, which I went through. But what I want to do is find out from you. First of all, tell my viewers who don't know who you are, who you are.
Well, I'm Phil Tagami, born and raised in Oakland, California. I'm the CEO of CCIG and the managing general partner of California Capital Group. And we are currently in a joint venture with A&B Property Corp to redevelop the former Oakland Army base.
You're also the person who successfully redeveloped the Rotunda, which we're in, on the 16th and Telegraph,
Right.
as well as the Fox Theater, where, among other groups, Coldplay has played.
Green Day,
B.B.
King,
legends.
Jeff Beck. Well, it's been fun. Another Planet Entertainment's done a wonderful job with the Fox, and we were part of that team. Us and a lot of people worked very hard to raise the money and oversee the restoration of that, and now it's something the community can enjoy for years.
Yeah, and congratulations on it.
Thanks.
Cool. But this is your magnum opus, I think.
Well, this is my for-profit opportunity.
Yay!
Well, this is a long time coming.
Seriously, yeah.
This is a long time coming, and we competed with 13 other firms to be selected, or considered, I should say, and then ultimately we were selected for the Oakland concession, and we competed through an RFQ process at the Port of Oakland against 4 other interested parties, and were selected for an exclusive negotiating agreement to work on the port concession. We're currently in our E&A with the city. Our port E&A expired November 1st of last year, but we've continued to have a very positive dialogue with the port, and there's hope that we will be able to reach agreement, though the port has a lot of choices to what it can pursue. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to work things out with the port, and we stay at the table and we keep tending the fire.
But from what I read, you're essentially expanding the port.
I think that's one way you could look at it. I think I would use different terminology. I would say that this is Oakland's opportunity to capture a benefit from the working waterfront. Mm-hmm. I think Oakland is a port city. If you were to travel into Europe and see license plates in Germany, you would see a B for Berlin and a D for Dusseldorf, and you'd see an HH for Hamburg. And you'd say, well, there are 2 H's in Hamburg, and it's because Hamburg is it's Hadelstadt Hamburg, or the port city of Hamburg. And they're very proud that they're a port city. And I think Oakland has a well-defined tradition and history of being a port city. Containerization was born in our port. Ben E. Nutter ushered in that era for the Port of Oakland. And that's revolutionized the way cargo is handled in the modern world. California has had a goal of having 3 first call facilities, and Oakland not only is a first call facility now, but is on the precipice of really being able to take advantage of what that will mean, not only for the import opportunities, but also for the export opportunities for California's cash crop and bumper crop. Over 400, safe food products, the best food products in the world, can get to market through the Port of Oakland. I'd say that the export right now is probably just a little better than the import, but it's very balanced, very close to 50-50. So this project, in essence, contemplates increased mobility as part of a national goods movement strategy, as part of our opportunity to capture the benefits of a working waterfront. It contemplates our environment, and that our methodologies of locating deconsolidation and transloading closer to the urban populace will decrease truck trips. For every 150,000 square feet of deconsolidation we erect, we will decrease roughly 14,000 truck trips per year from the port, and thereby improve the air quality here as well as throughout our region. And then it's also about economy. And so it's back to that capture of creating those jobs and those good paying jobs.
9,342 jobs, I think.
In whole, yeah, and I think that, when we look at our modeling that's done, and you, Zinni, as an economist, know we're using the in-plan modeling, so we have a closed back end, and it's projecting not only our direct jobs, but it's also projecting indirect jobs based on the spend. So we've tried to isolate that geographically.
And tell people you didn't fix those numbers in there. You used numbers that come with the in-plan model, right?
Well, that's correct. The back end of the in-plan program is sealed, so you're in essence buying their data that they get updated federal, state, and then county-wide. And then, of course, that data is also offered by zip code.
And you didn't hack into it to change anything.
God, I wish I knew how.
I do. Yeah, never mind. Anyway.
It's a closed-end program. So that's I'd like to think that the in-plan people have done a good job to provide a tool that people can use and offer companies such as ours an off-the-shelf product to be able to forecast and broadcast what we think impacts will be. So when municipalities are considering such things, they can evaluate, and also have their consultants evaluate to make sure that's what we think it is. All trust subject to verification.
First of all, we're talking about part of Oakland. A lot of people may not know, but it's right off the Bay Bridge, coming from San Francisco. It's on the right, and about roughly the size of the Magic Kingdom at Disneyland.
I wouldn't know that in acres. Half the size of Emeryville.
Okay.
Over 300 acres.
300.
You want to see a picture real quick?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll flip open a picture for you.
How much is this book worth, Phil?
That's a good question. What you have here in blue is the city concession. Excluded from the area that we're working with the city on is the North Gateway, that the city's got a separate process on. And what you see here in red is the port concession. And then this area to the right of the port concession is the proposed OHIT rail facility.
And that's the Nimitz Freeway, right?
That's correct.
And then this is on the way to the Bay Bridge.
That's correct.
That way.
This is the Bay Bridge right here.
Yeah, okay, that's the Bay Bridge. Yeah, okay. And so Emeryville is actually right over here, and Oakland is here. And actually, we are actually right down here.
You're actually right there.
Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah. And so, very exciting project.
Yeah.
So, what does it take, person watching this, particularly now talking to Oaklanders?
Yeah.
We need jobs in this town. We need jobs for the foreseeable future. What does it take to get this thing to the point where you are part of a celebration breaking ground?
Well, okay. A celebration of breaking ground and the types of jobs that we're after for this community, I think, are two different questions. So if you permit me just friendly modification.
Sure, absolutely, please.
I'll say this. I'll say there's a process that we are in which is negotiating. We're not proposing to buy this land. We're proposing to lease this land. Both the city and the port have separate processes to get to that determinant. Neither port or city can enter into an agreement until CEQA is completed. CEQA is the California Environmental Quality Act.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
There's been environmental study of this property done since '02. So we've had 2002 EIR, 06 and 07, and there's a section of CEQA which is called 11561 and 62, which says basically if there's a change of law or environmental condition, you need to study or specifically restudy. And in this case, AB 32, the Clean Air Act, and then SB 375 have been adopted since those EIRs were done. So we are restudying certain things to make sure we're compliant with those laws. So the EIR will pass muster. And baseline on air quality as well as traffic count. So we believe that to be the case. The CEQA work could be done as early as September. So I look at this and say that once we have an agreement, once we have CEQA in place, we can execute the agreement. Concurrent with that, because there are a series of concurrent tasks, we are getting ready in May to initiate a substantial design and planning effort to solve a series of constraints that pre-exist on site.
Kind of a competition?
No, not a competition. These are team members who are on our team that were part of the selection process, who will be contracted to design and solve a number of site constraints. Transportation related, sewer, storm sewer, water, power, soil. So, there are a lot of issues that we have to identify and solve. There's a lot that's been identified and solved, but still a lot to do. Once that work is substantially complete, there are roughly 28 regulatory agencies that we need to, in essence, go before and have review and make sure that we are consistent with not only the statute, but also the regulation of how we would go about reintroducing a new industrial district to Oakland.
For those listening, define what a site constraint is, because it's a good planning term.
Well, a site constraint would be undersized road or one that's in disrepair. It could be differential settlement, meaning soil is settling in certain areas. It could be environmental contamination, which there is present on the site. It could be broken or antiquated systems, sanitary sewer, storm sewer that aren't sized properly, or other systems. One example would be like a fire hydrant. Today's requirement would be a fire hydrant one every 150 feet, and the site does not have that. So nor is the capacity available to provide the volume of water under the appropriate pressure to serve new buildings that would be required to fight fires.
I remember last time we talked about this when you presented me with my own copy of that. Look, you said that basically the problem is that you're laying out a type of industrial city and having to build the infrastructure within it to handle all the stuff that you're going to add.
That's true. Yeah, so the Army base was built in haste to support a war effort. So in a very short period of time, they designed and built the Oakland Army base to serve that purpose. And there was, post-closing of the base, still some utility from it, but for all intents and purposes, the site's functionally obsolete. So the existing and non-conforming. So it doesn't meet any current codes and clearly is in disrepair and in the control right now of the city of Oakland and the port. The port's done some work on their land, the city has done some work on their land, but I think the consensus is that there's a great deal of work that needs to be done. Hundreds of millions of dollars worth of work that needs to be done on this land.
Right.
So proposing to use a combination of trade corridor improvement funds that were garnered by the port through a competitive state process, Prop 1B, some funding from the Surface Transportation Reauthorization that we hope gets underway this year, as well as some other targeted grants federally. Those dollars will go into the public infrastructure. So that's going into roads, main core services in the public right-of-way that serves the area.
How many pieces of legislation are we talking about that impact this project? Has anyone stopped to calculate that?
We know it from the regulatory side, and I could say that every time the city council or the port board takes an act, that's legislative.
Right.
And then some of the other grants that we've already
that's also legislative.
We've won,
right.
Those are legislative. So no, I can't say that I counted them all, but there are dozens probably when it's all said and done. This project was the recipient of a Tiger II grant from the federal government, specifically to augment planning, and is being, I think, wisely used by the city to cover some of the city staff costs associated with this effort. And that was a competitive process and an important one to be acknowledged under. This is a project of regional import. I think it's a good focus for our mega region, for an area larger than just the 9 Bay Area counties, but also of critical import to our city.
So we're looking at a construction cost of roughly $800 million when all said and done?
Well, you would be looking at the, you'd be including the soft cost and the vertical cost.
Right.
The vertical project is really a different project. There are really 3 projects here. You have a public infrastructure project or a public works project. You have a private, and I have to divide that between the city and the port because they have different responsibilities on their land and there are different ways of handling certain things on their land in that the port is subject to the Tidelands Trust.
Is it possible to just have one organization? I mean, we used to have the city, the port, or organization years ago. I don't know if that still exists.
The Joint City Port City
Right.
liaison committee
Yeah.
meeting still exists, but I would say that the ownership is separate. And though the port is a department of the city by law and with intent of such, the state gave it its sovereignty. So though it's a department of the city, it really acts independent of the city. But let me go on down. The third is the private development. So the vertical development, actually building buildings and the connections to the public utility or utility available in the right of way is a private investment. So that's probably for this phase of the project, you could say it's $225 million. So if you look at that as a whole, you then say that that's the full complement of development here.
Now, take us through the timeline, the ideal timeline. Right now, you made some comments that would lean one to imply there are issues, not necessarily deal breaker issues with the port, but there's some issues that have to be worked out.
Well,
you mentioned that the port has some choices.
Well, sure. The city always has choices. Just because a city or organization like the port enters into an RFQ or RFP process, or even an exclusive negotiating agreement, doesn't mean that it needs to conclude that effort. So it always reserves the right, if it decides it's not in its best interest or the best interest of the people, to do something different. So that's an important distinction.
That's true.
We spent a lot of time with the port. We solved a lot of problems, and we did a lot of good work, but we didn't have enough time to get there. And so we continue the dialogue because we believe, as I hope they do, that all the pieces are there to put a deal together. We've continued to talk. They, from what I know, have checked in with the marketplace and have gone back to others that were in the competition to see what their appetite for this project is, what their understanding and knowledge of it is, and their capacity to perform. And that's something they're going to need to evaluate. We don't know the result of that exercise. And we continue to work with the city and our partners there on moving our city deal forward, and remain hopeful that we'll be able to work with the port.
But what's interesting in that comment is it implies what, in point of fact, can't be possibly true. Because you're in ENA period, you're doing a lot of work on this on the grounds of this.
Daily.
Right. Now, the
So
competitors...
we're at risk.
So the competitors aren't. And
Well,
so to go back to them, if they, they could be sleeping on a Mai Tai in Maui or something.
Everyone's got a different approach. I can't speak for anyone else who's out in the marketplace and what they're doing. We were fortunate to partner with who we believe is the global leader in trade and logistics, and is best in class and had the strongest balance sheet, and through one of the worst economies in the history of this country, has come out healthy and is, quite frankly, has been a pleasure to do business with. It's been a good opportunity for us. We look at this and we look at the others who might be interested, and they've made their examination through the RFQ process and through the due diligence materials that were made available during the process. And some have monitored and watched and contacted us, and even have contacted the port to check in to see how things were going. So I couldn't speak for them, what their appetite is or what their understanding of the process is and the project is. We went beyond what was the literal request of proposal.
Right.
So we responded to the letter of the proposal, but we felt to be real about this, we needed to really invest a lot of time to have a good understanding of the infrastructure. But for that, this project would be happening a lot faster. And so an understanding of how these systems work, an understanding of how the approvals work for building new buildings in today's world with the rigor of today's standards, we knew that the infrastructure had to be up to the test.
And it wasn't.
And it's not. And everyone agrees that's the case. So now the question is, what steps are required to modernize that infrastructure, make it be able to support a new industrial district in an environmentally responsible way, that everyone can be proud that was something that was not only environmentally responsible, but it was something that was at a quality and a service level that we can then count on for the next 50 to 100 years. So there's a lot there. One of the elements of the project, 7th Street grade separation, is vital not only for the national goods movement strategy, but volumes through the port, as well as emissions, as well as providing safe access to public space that's located on the water side. Middle Harbor Shoreline Park is an example. Other important public improvements that our work will make hopefully more accessible and safe to get to is the new park planned at the foot of the Bay Bridge, which was a mitigation measure contemplated with the design of the new Bay Bridge, the eastern span, and is being delivered in by a group that includes BCDC, Caltrans, should really say the Bay Area Toll Authority, Caltrans, CTC, and MTC, but one that's been very collaborative. And there's half a dozen government agencies that have been collaborating on that.
It seems to me, though, that the city should put more energy from political and marketing standpoint in making sure that whoever has the NA is able to complete it with the minimum disruptions possible. And I don't get the sense that that's there. And tell me if I'm wrong.
Well,
I don't sense that there's a rule. I don't sense there's a political will to get this done, and yet.
I disagree with that.
Okay.
I would say that at great political risk, the former mayor, Ron Dellums, supported this project, supported us in this project, because he believed that it was important, and that it was that it would play an important role in Oakland being a model city, which was the mayor's focus. I believe our new mayor, Mayor Kwan, has also invested the time in her very short tenure so far. So it's just been a matter of months, and she's met with us on a number of occasions.
That's good.
Been briefed on the project, had some very good questions, and has been
What kind of questions does she have?
How much time do you have on your recording? She asked a lot of questions. She asked a lot of very good questions. And I can say honestly that we answered most all of them, but not all of them. Some of them we needed to go look and see. So she asked some really good questions. There's, I would say without a doubt, been a lot of support from the staff. This is a large undertaking.
Yeah.
And so...
and that's why I speak to the political will issue.
And I would tell you that would we like things to happen faster? I think, everyone would always like them to happen faster. Have we benefited from this interval of time? Meaning, have we as developers and investors learned more about the project?
Unquestionably.
And has the city, meaning the community, which I'm also a part of, by the way, have we as a people learned more about this because of the interval of time? Yes. So ultimately, it's probably a good. At the time that you're experiencing a delay, you might feel a little fussy. I think that's pretty human to think that, me now, faster. But the reality is that this interval of time has probably been a net positive to this project. But for where we are with some of the federal funding, everything's fine. We didn't count, and we kept our allocation of tax increment very low on our planning. So on this very large project,
I got to explain to viewers that, hold on. For those of you who are in planning school, you really should be watching this, because I have to explain to you, first, tax increment is tax increment financing. This property, what is the excess value of this right now?
Well, I would take a slightly different approach.
Okay.
I mean, I would add that, we, for reasons that were different than the current state budget, we contemplated very low increment use because we felt that West Oakland needed benefit of increment more than this project did.
And the increment is based on your projection of how the property is going to turn over.
Our investment in the property will increase the possessory income tax because we're tenants, not owners, but also its assessed value. Therefore, it's with the revenue that it will generate over its base level is money the city can, under a redevelopment scenario, issue bonds for and use that money to leverage other dollars
and a person
for redevelopment.
Uneducated would say, well, what does it mean to have a a conservative estimate. What I'm explaining is a conservative estimate is basically your low rate. Property turns over, it comes up, it decreases at 2%. But you're estimating the market isn't going to be that active. That produces a lower increment.
Right.
Yeah, that's definitely it. No.
There's a substantial amount of increment if redevelopment exists and remains that would be generated here. We had counted for the project based only on the increment that had been generated with capacity that it was pre-existing, about $10 million in increment. So it's
annually.
No, total for the whole project.
Wow. Okay.
So meaning that
that is conservative.
Very.
Yeah.
So and it's a rounding error in essence. It's a fraction of our contingency. We were letting the increment inure to the benefit of the rest of the redevelopment district to West Oakland, feeling that the increment we were showing was only for public infrastructure. So there was no public involvement or public subsidy, if you want to use that term, on private development of buildings that were built with private dollars. So we see this as a real separation. Again, the city streets, the power, the sewer, the water, in the right-of-way is public works, paid for with public funds. The private development on land that's leased for a long term is paid for by private dollars. The cost to connect to utilities and services are paid for privately, and that's the division that we made. Because we were asked to deliver a market rate deal. So that was in essence our way to approach that. So you asked about schedule, and there's a couple different ways to look at schedule. And a friend of mine who now occasionally blogs used to use software that analyzed systems dynamic analysis.
Now, who is that?
And who could that be? And so
I have no idea.
Not having access to the software but thinking those thoughts.
It's called Stella.
Is that what it's
I'll
called?
get you a copy.
I actually,
for your birthday.
We did the logic of this project differently than just our normal PERT chart, but also did it in our PERT chart format. So that that is this basically saying what's supposed to happen at different points in time. So green, summer of 2010, purple, fall, orange was 2011 to 13, blue was 2017. So it was understanding that were certain concurrent tasks that needed to happen, but also a series of prerequisite tasks that had to occur before you could move forward.
Here. And we are here right now.
Right.
The horizontal program.
Right, where we're just getting started. And so then if you broke it down, slide by slide, of course, we go and show how each of these groups works and how it tracks. So that's a little excerpt of that guy.
Is this all going to be online at some point?
It is. It will all be online at some point in time. Copies of our book are public. We made them public, so they're available at the Community Economic Development Agency, the Oakland Chamber of Commerce, and we have, as you walk out, you'll see a few volumes. We wanted to be prepared to have a couple available at the library.
And the Community Economic Development Agency, that's at
250
Franco Valley Plaza on the 5th floor.
5th floor.
And Oakland Chambers over here on 14th and Broadway, 475.
That's right.
And
on the ground floor.
And of course we have the Oakland Library.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the idea was making sure that, this is the November 15th, 2010 version. It's the 9th published version of this document, but the final through that phase of work. And it's what we will be, I would say, the syllabus of a lot of the work that we've done. So
we've got now a good almost 30 minutes of video, so I know you're busy. I want to have you explain to...
Rapid fire round?
Well, rapid fire round. What are the key dates the public needs to pay attention to that are coming up?
Well, the City Council is going to undertake this in early April and make a determination if they want to take the next step. In essence, extending the ENA to allow us to complete the work we're doing now with CEQA, number one. Two, to start to allocate money to do the actual design work and planning work that's required to fix the infrastructure. I would say the Port Board may, I won't say they will, but they may, and in April, start to evaluate how they want to proceed with the Oakland Army Base and what their next steps are. In that analysis, in that contemplation may be continuing work with us or others. We will cooperate with them clearly as a tenant, as a partner, as a neighbor, because ultimately we're all trying to reach the same objective. There's a vision we had, which was one project, one vision, one project, one team. We'd still like to believe that that counts. The members on the team is something that can be expansive. There are other companies that are part of the global supply chain that invariably will play a role and may play a role earlier than later. That we'll need to see. One of the large elements of this project is rail. We've been working very diligently on our plan to satisfy that rail plan, but that rail plan has to be vetted and deemed commercially viable by both the Union Pacific and Burlington Northern Santa Fe if they are going to call on that facility and use it. And clearly, we have to meet the U.S. Shipping Act requirements, which means that facility also has to be equally available to any of the carriers that currently call on the Port of Oakland as an independent open facility. So as we go through this process, for every element, every step of the way, we need to be have a very open dialectic, be very willing to share information, very transparent, but also very diligent and mindful of where we are by way of getting things done. This is about the planning effort is about a 14-month exercise. The net of that effort is there will be some work that will be completed to a level that you would say is ready for a design, build, construction, delivery method, and other systems and other disciplines will have work done to maybe a 35% level of completion. If we're going to pursue traditional delivery methods, in essence design, bid, build, where there's a more formal and completed design before going out to a public bid.
Phil, this is a project that I know Oaklanders want to see get done, and are very happy and proud that you're working on it. But also, I think this is something that planning students need to pay attention to. So, can they contact you if they have any questions?
Well, we're working a lot right now, and I would say that we've done a total of, I believe it's 22 public briefings on this project.
Wow.
And I've been to, in the educational format, I've been before planning students to talk about this project as well as public policy students. But if there was a class or a group that wanted a presentation, we would always cooperate. I'm going to be giving another talk in Jack London Square on, I think it's May 19th. So, these requests come in and we honor them. But right now, it's conservative to say that I'm doing this 7 days a week.
No.
So this is a
you need an extra day in the week
just to rest.
Yeah.
But this is the exercise right now is all hands on deck. There's a lot of work to do. There are many tasks prerequisite to getting a deal done. If we waited, in fact, I'll refer to the quote. Sure. So we have to give proper homage to he who spoke it. But I
saw this, yeah.
So Fred Ross Sr., who was a community organizer, said, if there is something to be done, do it now. If you wait until you have all the time, people, and resources to go ahead, you may still never get there because you did not fill the interval with the action required to get you there. So knowing that there's uncertainty, as there always is, we've made a commitment to get this project done and be successful with it. So we continue to fill the interval of time, we think, with the work prerequisite to being able to get the job done, and also work that's concurrent with the approvals required to be able to move ahead.
Phil, I'm going to come back to you on this, but thank you.
My pleasure, Zenny.
Very much.
Thanks for stopping in.
Got it.